Okay, so what got you here isn't actually going to get you there. I want to talk to you today about the art of leveling up inside of your business. Let's dive in. All right, welcome back. As always, I'm glad that you're here, and I want to talk to you today about the art of leveling up and this concept of what got you here won't get you there. I want to talk a little bit about my own journey and just kind of the way that I thought 10 years ago, 5 years ago, the way I think today, and the way I'm going to think in the future as well. And so 10 years ago, I was 22 years old. I was fresh out of college. I had just moved here to pursue my wife and got a job, and I didn't know anything about anything. I had just read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I knew that I wanted to take care of my family financially. I showed up in Longview, Texas, not knowing what the future held for me. I got a job in a sales environment as a 22-year-old kid. Luckily, I did pretty good in that sales job, did pretty good financially, but I realized shortly thereafter I didn't want to stay there. Well, that was 10 years ago. 5 years ago, I was 27. I was a couple years into owning my own business and was really honestly struggling. Wasn't making any financial progress in my life. Didn't really know, like, from a professional standpoint, where do I want to go? What do I want to do for business? What I wanted to do? I knew that I wanted to grow my business, but I didn't know how. So we looked at 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and then today I have grown a successful woodworking business. I've sold it for multiple six figures. This year we've broken the $1 million net worth mark as a family, me and my spouse. We've made a lot of progress, and most of that progress has come in the last 2 years. It's almost like I spent all of my 20s learning what has happened and implementing what I've learned in just 2 years' time to get me astronomically better results. But the concept that I'm trying to pull out is that what got me to where I am today is actually not going to get me to where I'm trying to go. And it's the same concept that can be applied to your own life and your own business as well. And so I want to talk to you about how do you level up? How do you think bigger, dream bigger, implement bigger, expand your capacity as a person? How do you actually level up as a business owner, as a husband, as a father, as a child of God? How do you level up in all of these ways inside of your life? And so I want to give you 4 ways to master the art of leveling up. Okay, so these are 4 principles that are going to allow you to consistently grow as a person and as a business owner. So number 1, and man, I cannot stress this enough, is to read. If you are listening to this and you are not a reader, I understand where you're coming from. I used to not be a reader either. When I was in high school, I read because I was forced to read. It was like, man, I don't ever want to read books again. But I realized that I didn't like reading because I was being forced to read things that I didn't care about. But if you're passionate about something, finding the people that have gone before you and have succeeded greatly to the point that they would write their own book or that they would provide expertise, there's literally no better way to tap into the most brilliant minds in all of history than to read the books that they've written. So more than anything else that I can contribute my success to, it's from reading and consuming content from people that have done what I'm trying to do. So I don't have a lot of extra time. So sitting down and actually reading a book is not a very common thing for me. So I've done a lot of Audible. I have an Audible subscription, and I actually have over 100 books that I have completed inside of my Audible account in the last 6 or 7 years. So on average, I'm reading like 15 books a year, guys. And so with that equips you with understanding and knowledge in different frames of reference that you don't currently have. If you want to level up, the number 1 tip that I can give you is to start reading. And if you don't have time or energy to read a book, get an Audible subscription. Audible is like $15 a month. You get 1 book each month, and they also run specials sometimes where you can get credits to buy more books at a discounted rate. But by doing that, I've spent, $700 in the last 6 years, and I have made literally over $1 million from what I've read. So I've turned $700 in investing into knowledge from books into over $1 million in just my net worth. That's not actually how much revenue I've generated. So that's number 1. You've got to read if you want to level up. Number 2 is that you have to implement what you read. And so this is one of the biggest disconnects that a lot of people have is that, so what happens is when you're learning something, there's an endorphin that's released in your brain and it feels like you're succeeding because you're learning. This is a good thing. It's good to feel successful because you're learning. But the problem is that you haven't actually implemented anything that you've learned yet. You've only consumed the knowledge and it hasn't been applied to your unique situation. If you want to level up, you have to read and you have to implement. So you have to immediately take a strategy or a tactic that you learn and go do the thing. I'm going to leave it at that. You have to implement what you learn. Okay, number 2. Number 3 is that you have to review what happens. So I call this implementing a healthy feedback loop. We want to learn from reading, from consuming content, from having great conversations, whatever that might be. We want to implement it, and then we want to review it. Did this thing work as I thought it would work? Did this tactic or this strategy work? So if you want to level up, you need to constantly be learning, implementing, and reviewing. This is what we call a feedback loop. And then once you review it, you can say, hey, yeah, this worked. We need to do more of it. Or, hey, this didn't work like I thought it was going to work. We need to tweak this thing here or this thing there. And the one thing I'll say, guys, too, that I think that has contributed to my success in business is not being afraid to get into the details of specifically asking questions with your teammates, or specifically asking, did you actually do this very specific thing? Did this get accomplished? And getting into the weeds and not just saying, does the strategy work as a whole? Yes or no? Oh, well, we throw the strategy out if it didn't work. That's not necessarily always the case. The strategy may include multiple tiny steps along the way. By asking questions around each one of these little steps, we might find that there's just a disconnect with one little step that if we fix that thing, the whole thing begins to work again. So that's number 3. Number 4, the final point I want to give you today on leveling up is to plan for the future. And so I see a lot of guys, they just don't ever really get clarity around their future. And I learned a few years back that when I was in the mode of considering something and thinking about something, I would never act. It only came down to when I decided that it was going to happen. For example, a great example that I can give you with this is that when I was in college, I saw a guy one time and he was playing the guitar, and I was like, man, I would love to learn how to play the guitar. And then 8 months later, I saw another guy playing the guitar and singing, and I was like, man, I really would love to learn how to play the guitar. That's super cool. And then later, I saw another guy playing the guitar, and then later, I saw another guy playing the guitar, and I finally was like, you know what? Dang it, I'm going to learn how to play the guitar. So I went and I found somebody that had a guitar they weren't using. I borrowed it. I pulled up chord charts and I started playing the guitar. And I learned how to play the guitar. The decision is what actually enabled the action to happen. It's actually what enabled me to level up my skill set. I went from pondering and thinking and considering to deciding. What a lot of people never tend to do is they never actually make a decision and decide, this is where we're going to go. This is where my life is going to go. This is where my business is going to go. And so if they never make a decision, then they don't ever develop a plan to get them where they're deciding to go, because they never decided. Okay, so by making a clear decision of what you want out of life and then putting a clear plan in place, it's going to make it way easier to get where you're trying to go. This is one of the things that I realized, was that I was just spending too much time thinking and considering and pondering. You have to go from those things to deciding and acting. And what you're going to realize is that when you decide and you act, you're going to face a ton of resistance. Because number 1, you've never done these things before, so you don't know what the heck you're doing. Number 2, this is outside of what we call homeostasis. You know, you live life this way your entire life, and then you decide you're going to do this out of nowhere, and your mind and your body is like, what are you doing? So it feels weird. It feels unnatural. Number 3 is you're going to have imposter syndrome, where you think, oh, well, if I'm going to try to do this, or I'm trying to do this, you have all these things in your mind telling you, you're not good enough to pull that off. You've never done this before. How are you going to do that? You have all this negative self-talk. These are all going to happen as you decide to change your life. And so just know that that's coming. But in order to get where you're trying to go, what has gotten you here is not going to get you there. And so you need to do these 4 things in order to actually level up and get where you're trying to go. So with that being said, if you're a woodworking business owner or hobbyist and you're trying to grow your woodworking business, I got some resources for you. We got a free ebook below. It's the very first link in the description. You just got to enter your first name and email, and we will send that book over to you. It's a PDF copy. It's about 100 pages long, and it's completely free to you. And it's really a step-by-step plan of how I got from starting in my garage to scaling my woodworking business to over $70,000 per month last year. Okay, so it's really how you can do the exact same thing. Number 2, the Handmade Hero Academy program. If you are stuck and you're just trying to get to some consistent revenue, $5,000 to $10,000 per month would change your life. I cannot recommend this program enough. If you sell one thing from what you learn inside of that program, guys, it's going to cover the cost that it took to learn it, okay? Number 3, last one I have for you is if you guys are trying to grow your woodworking business into the tens of thousands of dollars per month. So let's say $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 per month. Be sure to check out the Woodworking Business Accelerator program. We're going to work with me directly, and I'm going to help you scale your woodworking business. And so other than that, I hope you guys have an awesome day. I hope that you're being blessed. And if you haven't subscribed yet, get your life together and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.